Hello, I'm Ross and welcome to a brief introduction into the new icon innovation kit in a day. I'm going to give you a quick introduction into what this innovation day kit is all about, what's included in it, a bit of a breakdown about the sessions and the exercises and just what it is and what a completed session looks like. So without further ado, let's delve in. So the first thing to really state is this is a day workshop. It is a starting point for innovation. This is a condensed version of the designer's job. And as previously stated, it is the starting point. It is something to get the ball rolling. It is made up, as you can see, of four different sessions. So it's a day and it's made up of 4 sessions that are timed throughout the day. There are a number of exercises, I think there's about 19 all in, and they have been suitably timed and trialed and tested. And the idea is that you run through each of those from start to finish. Session number 1, if I zoom into my board, session number 1 is all about exploring problems and challenges. And this is really where workshoppers are invited to answer any of these questions. Questions in this exercise are in the form of these resource cards, or we're calling them prompt cards. So exercise 1 is exploring problems using the prompt card exercise. And really, we're just getting workshoppers trying to chuck down any problems they feel like they're having. It could be everyday problems, it could be work-specific problems. They are the 2 sets of cards that we have included currently. And the idea is that the workshopping team are throwing all their ideas onto the board. In some instances, workshoppers may be able to put their answers down without the need for the prompt cards. But really, we're all about exploring problems. And these questions on the prompt cards are really to sort of pull out answers from workshoppers. The goal of the exercise is to have a number of problems that have been put onto the board. And they could range from anything global to internal to company specific. It could literally be anything. So that's exercise 1, exploring problems with the prompt card exercise. Exercise number 2 is introducing problems with the choose and introduce exercise. And we just come up with hopefully a high number of problems in the first exercise. We can't take them all through. We can't work on all of them in this one day session. And the idea is we need to start narrowing those options down. So the second exercise is all about asking each person to choose their 1 or 2 favorites, the 1 or 2 that they've put down which they find most interesting. Maybe they're the ones that they have experienced the most. But the point of exercise number 2 is to put out their 2 favorites, 1 or 2 favorites, and explain why they're the most important. In all likelihood, they're going to be the ones that they work on for the rest of this particular session. Exercise number 3 is creating challenges with the "it would be great if" exercise. So we're now working with our chosen problem statements, the 1 or 2 problem statements that have been brought through here. And we are turning these negative problem statements into positive challenge statements using a bit of positive thinking. It's much easier to work with positive statements. They suggest there are solutions available. You know, they're thinking of the positives in what could be solved with that problem. And the challenge or the point of this exercise would be to start each sentence with "it would be great if," and to come up with a number of "it would be great if" challenge statements that allude to solutions. They allude to reframe statements that suggest a solution can come from it. Exercise number 4 is much like exercise number 2 in that we're narrowing those "it would be great if" statements down. Again, for the same reasons, we can't take them all through. These statements need to be narrowed down to a smaller number, and each workshopper is asked to choose 1 or 2 and explain why. The final exercise number 5 in session 1, is voting. Now, so far, each workshopper has worked on their own problem statement. They've worked on their own "it would be great if" challenge statements, and this is the last exercise of the session. But it's getting other people now deciding which ones they like, and ultimately which challenge gets taken through for the rest of the workshop. Exercise 5 is the voting exercise, and it's voting. Each workshopper gets a number of votes, and they simply have to choose which one interests them the most. It can be one of their own, it can be one of the others. So that's session 1. Session 1 has all been about exploring problem spaces, initially coming up with all sorts of problems that could relate to anything in the world, whether it be internal, personal, family, platform, product, anything. It could anything. And then as you go through the session, it's all about narrowing those options down, turning those negative problem statements into more positively focused challenge statements using the It Would Be Great If exercise, and ultimately voting on the one to take through to the final exercise. Session number 2 of our day workshop is the define session. This is where we are going to start taking our challenge statement and defining the people, the goals, and the frustrations. It is all about identifying the people initially. This workshop is really thinking about the people that are at the center of the problem. We've identified the problem. Now we need to know who does it involve. And so exercise 1 is the people mapping exercise. And all workshoppers have to do here are identify all of the people who relate most to the challenge. Who does it affect most? Why does it affect them? How are they involved? This is called the people mapping exercise. Pretty simple. Exercise number 2 is the exercise called the someone who exercise. And this is all about grouping people who have similar commonalities. They have similar needs or similar problems. It's simply a grouping exercise. And we find the someone who question is a good way of grouping. These 2 or 3 people are all people who, and then whatever their commonality is. So exercise 2 is the someone who exercise. Exercise 3 is where we start to create characters. So we now have identified all of the people involved with our challenge. We have identified how they could be grouped together. And now we're going to start working on a specific character. This is what would have been called persona in design language. And it's important to say at this point is our workshop in the day kit moves away slightly from the everyday language used in design teams. This is now it's now hopefully using language which is a bit more friendly. It's a bit more normal to your everyday workshopper. We've got to remember that people taking part in these workshops aren't necessarily from design teams. They could just be management or employees at companies. So exercise 3, as mentioned, is the character creation exercise. It's creating a character. We're giving them a name. We're giving them a person. And this is a person that represents our chosen someone who group. We had to have chosen one someone who group from the previous exercise. And now we're inventing a person who fits within that group, coming up with their bio. We are thinking about what their goals are in relation to the challenge statement and the problem statement. We are thinking about what their frustrations are in relation to the challenge and problem statements. And this is quite a fun exercise. So exercise 3 is our character creation exercise. Exercise 4 is what we call the tell a story exercise. We're creating short stories or scenarios. We've come up with our character and now we're trying to imagine. We know the scenarios they're going to find themselves in relation to our problem. And in this exercise, workshoppers have to take a goal. They take one goal and one pain point and put them together, and they form a scenario. And they can use as many goals and pain points as they like to form as many number of scenarios as they want or stories as they want. Stories should be sort of different all the way through. But telling these short stories is a good way just to visualize the scenarios that that our character finds themselves in. Exercise number 5 is much like a couple of the exercises in the first session, which is choosing your favourite scenarios, your favourite stories. You're choosing the ones which you feel are the most appropriate in regards to the chosen problem challenge statement that's been brought through. They are the stories or scenarios which seem the most interesting, which seem to have the most ideas associated to them. And you're going to explain why they're your favourite ones. And that's the end of session number 2. So we started the session with our challenge statement from session number 1. We've looked at all the people that are involved with the problem, who it relates to. We then grouped them. We've grouped all the people into groups who have similar commonalities. We've chosen one of those groups, and we have created a character that represents that group. We've worked out who they are, what they do, what their relationship is to the problem, what their goals and frustrations are. And we started to create scenarios and stories that our character might find themselves in relation to the challenge statement. And then we've chosen a number of them to take through to the next session. So that is session number 2. We now have a challenge statement and we have a number of stories created. Session number 3 is what we call the develop session. We are developing ideas and we're developing features and processes in this session. And it starts with the how could we exercise. We're identifying opportunities. Starting point for exercise 1 is pulling through all of the chosen stories that we've created in the previous exercise. And we are creating some how could we statements. We are reading these stories and coming up with a whole bunch of statements that suggest or that are asking the question, how could we? How could we fix this? How could we solve this? How could we help people do this? How could we help people find this? We're starting to ask this question to ourselves that is really going to start forming solutions following this exercise. So workshoppers simply have to come up with a bunch of how could we statements that start to allude to the idea of a solution. Exercise number 2 is the choose and introduce exercise again. Workshoppers simply have to choose their 1 or 2 favourite how could we statements, the ones which reflect the stories they had created in the previous couple of exercises. Exercise number 3, and we're in feature generation. We now have some scenarios that we created. We have a collection of how could we statements. How could we fix this? How could we do this? How could we help this? How could we plan this, etc.? And the point of this exercise is to start coming up with a number of features that might answer those questions. And really, this is the first sort of opportunity where everything goes. Nothing is a bad idea here. If it is a solution to any of these questions, it is valid. Anything goes. These features can be as crazy or as futuristic or as plain and boring as you want them to be. But if they are solutions to any of these questions, they're great. Exercise number 4, and we're now going to start creating storylines. Storylines, what we may be calling user flows or user processes in design language. We're not using design language anymore, but storylines is a great way of just explaining the start and the end and filling in the gaps in the middle through a storyline. We are starting by using stories that we've created, the scenarios. Remember, those scenarios were made up of one pain point and one goal. And the way in which we complete this exercise is start with the start point, start with the end point, which is the goal, and then filling in all the steps in the middle. And the real question that we should keep in the back of our minds when we're trying to do with this exercise, and it's really where the innovation kit started and came from, is considering the question, in a perfect world, how would it work? This is assuming everything is available, everything is possible. In a perfect world, how would it work? How could we create the storyline for the perfect solution? And the simplest way to do this would be having a start point, whether it be launching the app or logging into something or opening your laptop on one end, and then on the other side is the goal that the person's trying to achieve. And it's a simple case of filling out all the steps that person might need to go through to reach the goal. So that's exercise number 4, the storyline. And that completes session number 3. We have started to take our stories. We've created how could we statements. We're asking ourselves questions about how we could solve these answers. We're taking those statements and we're starting to generate features that solve those problems. And then we're taking collectively the stories and keeping the features in the back of our minds and creating storylines. The 4th and final session is the Visualise session, and really all we're doing here is drawing. We're visualizing those storylines that we just created. And the only exercise in here is the storyboarding exercise. Right now, up until this point, we've been in the land of words. Everything we've done so far has been sort of collaborative conversation and chatting and getting ideas down in words, which has been great just for getting quick thoughts and things down there without being bogged down with drawing and detail and thinking too much around it. We're now at the point where we want to do that. So we're moving from the world of words and into visual. And in this one exercise, we're simply replicating the storylines that we created and drawing visual representations of. Workshoppers do not have to be artists. Drawing skills can be at a minimum. It really doesn't require drawing skill at all. The examples that we put in here really do show that as long as we're visualizing the storylines, anything really goes. They can be as messy as they need to be. The alternative to this, if people weren't comfortable with drawing, would be to use the supplied resources that are in here. So again, we've added a resource sheet, a storyboard sheet, and a bunch of sort of already pre-drawn elements which people could use to create their screens. And that would conclude the workshop in a day. So to summarize, we have gone through, in the space of one day, exploring a whole host of problems and problem statements and problem areas that all of our workshoppers can come up with. And we've taken it right through to looking at the people involved in the problem in session 2, turning those sort of stories and ideas into features in session 3 and creating storylines. And in session 4, ending on an exercise, a fun exercise where we're visualizing and drawing. To reiterate, this is a starting point for innovation, and it is what we find is a great collection of exercises, a great flow of exercises that just help people move from one step to the next, and at the end of the day have something tangible to take away from their workshop, some visuals of this new idea that they've come up with. And the most important thing is it's a new idea that is in answer to a problem that needs to be solved. So that's it. That was a brief introduction into our innovation kit in a day. I hope you've enjoyed the introduction. Thank you very much.